The final part of question 9 was a little theory question, and the average was 55%, which is quite pleasing given that firstly it's theory and secondly it's at the end of the paper. It was actually the second last question. So what we were asked, or what we were given, was prior to October 2015 the business budgeted on an annual basis, but now it budgets on a monthly basis. What are two benefits of preparing budgets monthly instead of doing it on an annual basis? So what we just want to remember to answer this question is, well, what do we do when we budget? We take a reporting period and we look ahead and we say, what do we think will happen? That's a budget. And then at the end of that period, we look at a variance report. We look at what actually happened with what we expect. That's step one, but that's not the end of it. We want to remember that we do things from that. We identify any significant problems. And then for those problems, we want to take corrective action to fix them. And then we want to make a new budget to prepare for the next period. So that's the entire budgeting process and the reason why we do it. And what's important to remember is we don't stop there. We then, at the end of the next period, we do a variance report, we identify problems, correct them, and do a new budget, and so on. So what this question's about is, well, how long should we make these reporting periods? We can go from 12 months to 12 months before we actually do the variance report and identify problems, take action, and so on. We can do 6 monthly. We could make it 3 monthly, or in this case, we're going to make it every month. So what we've gone from with this business is doing it once a year. So waiting until the end of the year to go through that budgeting process, those 4 steps. And what we're going to do instead is do a budget at the end of January. And then that'll lead to a new budget for the month of February. And then we'll compare it and sort of identify problems, fix any problems that we have, and then do a new budget. Same for March, and then for the rest of the year, we're just going to every month do that budgeting process and identify problems, fix them, and do a new budget. So why should we do this then? So the best way to look at that is maybe look at an example. Let's say the business has a real problem with bad debts in January. Now, if we're doing yearly budgeting and we've got a problem in January, our problem is we're actually not going to identify that throughout the year. We might think we have a problem, but until we've actually done a budget variance report and compared our results with what we hoped and identified problems and fixed them, that's going to be an issue for the whole 12 months. Now compare that to, and we can't fix it until the end of the year, compare that to if we did it monthly. We might have a problem in January, we do a budget, we can identify that there's a problem and we can fix it and do a new budget. And that allows us to have a go at fixing it in February. Now maybe we don't fix it completely, but at least we know there's a problem. Now we can do another budget and maybe see that it's getting better. And what we can do now is to even take more corrective action, and maybe in March it actually stops being a problem, and therefore in April it's not a problem. And every month, because we're actually identifying and keeping a track of things, we fix this issue so it doesn't affect the performance of the business for the entire year. So the question we were asked was to state 2 benefits of doing a budget monthly instead of on an annual basis. So these are some of the things we could have said. It allows you to better monitor your actual versus budgeted to identify any significant variances or problems. Helps prevent unfavorable trends continuing throughout the year. So if we identify bad debts as a problem in January, we can fix it well before December so it doesn't ruin our performance. Allows for corrective action to be taken to fix significant variances. You can't fix something if you can't measure it or don't measure it, so we want to be able to take corrective action to fix things, but to do that we're going to need to do a budget very regularly. Provides better control and planning. Management can make more accurate new budgets during the year. So that last step of the budgeting process was to make a new budget for next period, and that budget's going to be useless if we're only doing it once a year. So if we're doing it every month, we're going to have a budget with better numbers for every month during the period. And lastly, it allows management to work with staff to provide more regular feedback on progress towards goals. So a bit of a BizMan style answer there, but that's equally valid, something that we could have spoken about. Looking at the marks for this question, 21% of students couldn't find one reason as to why we should budget monthly, and at the other end, basically 3 out of 10 students, or a third, were able to come up with 2 valid reasons. The average was 1.1, and the examiner commented that high scoring responses focused on the timeliness. So it was all about making things identifiable earlier so we can fix them. And lastly, more regular feedback, timely decision making, better planning. These were all reasons that featured in high scoring responses as to why we should budget more frequently.